Janelle Dill, and I'm starting a documentary series called Disabilities. This is what I have, not who I am. I decided to start this documentary series to expose the myths and misconceptions about people with disabilities, such as epilepsy. After talking with a friend named Josh, who has his own documentary series, I considered starting my own series. I wasn't sure at first if I wanted to do this, but after some thought, I figured, hey, why not? Epilepsy is my first one, since it's something that's a little close to home. I have epilepsy, and a lot of people I know have it as well. Epilepsy is a very tricky subject because there's a whole lot of myths and myths behind it, most of which are based on superstitions, and they've mainstreamed still into the media, such as Facebook and Twitter. My goal is to expose them for what they are and hopefully help you inside of this tricky world. The disabled world, that is. But not just for the world of epilepsy, but for many other disabilities as well. I hope you enjoy part 1, and I hope to make many others in the future. So here it is, Disabilities Part 1. This is what I have, not who I am. When you see a pink ribbon, you're aware of breast cancer. And when you see a red ribbon, you know it's for heart disease. But what about a purple ribbon? Chances are you don't. Neither do people who are diagnosed with epilepsy every year. Epilepsy is not well advertised, nor has it broken through the stereotypes of falling on the floor, shaking all over, and foaming at the mouth. Epilepsy is a neurological disorder that causes the brain to dysfunction and sets off and triggers a series of seizures. 3 million. So how in the world has epilepsy affected my life? Well, I'll tell you. 10 years ago, I was sitting in class with my friends at Allegheny College in Maryland, and the course was Survey of American Literature. The last thing I remember is talking to my friends. The next thing I know, I wake up in the ambulance with 2 EMTs standing over me. Perplexed, I thought I fell asleep in class. Everything is a blur from here, except calling my mom at the hospital. Later that evening, I talked to my professor and reassured him that I was okay. The next day, I saw my family doctor, and she sent me to a neurologist who later diagnosed me with epilepsy. I started to take a new medication, and things began to change. No more pork products, no more musical theater, no more going to the movie theaters, no more video games, no more chocolate, and I had to give up dairy. Yes, I'm allergic to dairy. Of course I'm allergic to dairy, but I really had to give it up completely. I miss some things more than others, like chocolate and bacon. I love them both, and dairy too. I love ice cream. But within 2 years, my first neurologist left. In between my first neurologist and my current neurologist, I had this in-between period where I just had a temporary doctor of sorts, and she gave me a prescription for my migraines. I got these really bad migraines when I was working at summer camp. This medication caused more harm than help for about 7 long years. At the time, I didn't know what to do. Epilepsy was still new to me. I went to Geneva College after I started taking this new medication and learned all about the disabled world and discovered disability services, organizations, and made friendships that will last me a lifetime. After I graduated from Geneva, I forgot everything I learned. I lost opportunities for going grad school. I was really sick. Was a candidate at one point in 2010 for a blood transfusion. But thankfully I did not have to get one. I can't explain it, except it's a miracle. I ended up having vertigo for 3 months. My seizures were getting not so good. I had asthma. I had to get taken off my migraine medication by 2012. And I can officially say I am 1 year free from the migraine medication that made me really sick. And being off the migraine medication, and of course the corticosteroid inhaler I took for my asthma, has been unbelievable. People have noticed a difference who haven't seen me in a long time. They've said it's like night and day. My vision looks so clear. My eyes look so clear. I've noticed big differences too. But I'm not saying that I'm completely free from epilepsy. I'm free in one sense, but not in another. I will always have times where I will be prone to having seizures. I will always have problems with the colors red and blue, stripes, polka dots, floral prints, and I will always be sensitive to flashing lights, blinking lights, weather changes, extreme heat and extreme cold. And so I've learned to... I personally consider epilepsy to be a thorn in the flesh. There's a song out there by Plum called Need You Now, How Many Times? I think it really captures the essence of what epilepsy kind of feels like. I'm gonna read to you the words. I know there's a couple of my friends out there who would go, "Sing it, Janelle, come on, sing it." I'd rather read the words because they're just so poetic and capture the essence of the world of epilepsy. Well, everybody's got a story to tell, and everybody's got a wound to be healed. I want to believe there's beauty here. Oh, I get so tired of holding on. I can't let go. I can't move on. I want to believe there's meaning here. How many times have you heard me cry out, "God, please take this"? How many times have you given me strength to just keep breathing? Oh, I need you. God, I need you now. standing on a road I didn't plan, wondering how I got to where I am. I'm trying to hear that still small voice. I'm trying to hear above the noise. How many times have you heard me cry out, God, please take this? How many times have you given me strength to just keep breathing? Oh, I need you. God, I need you now. Oh, I walk through the shadows. And I am so afraid. Please stay right beside me with every single step I take. How many times have you heard me cry out, God, please take this? How many times have you given me strength to just keep breathing? Oh, I need you. God, I need you now. Nobody really asks to have epilepsy. You don't wake up one day and say, oh yes, I'd like to have epilepsy, please, with a side of seizures. Epilepsy you either have epilepsy or you don't have epilepsy. Epilepsy is a struggle between being here in the present or your absent present. You're here, but you're not here. I call it my thorn in the flesh because I've struggled so much to want it taken out of me, and it's not been taken out of me. I can't say why I've been given it, but all I can say is how amazing it is to talk about epilepsy, to connect with people who have epilepsy, and to help other people who are going through the same struggles, not necessarily in the same way that I do, but to connect with people who want to know more about epilepsy, or who just don't know what to do. You just throw up your hands and go, this is too much. How in the world can I deal with epilepsy? And I just, instead of wanting to figure out the solution to epilepsy on my own, I've just stepped back and just given it up to God. That's the only thing I can do. I just have faith. I'm walking in the dark a lot, but He gives me the light I need. I just have hope. It's crazy ridiculous, but I have hope. HOPE. Holding on. Peace exists. But it's not just that kind of hope. It's another kind of hope. Helping other people with epilepsy. There's another song that kind of captures that essence for me in my life. It's Johnny Lang's song, Getting on My Knees. It's from his album Turn Around. The chorus really kind of captures that essence for me. On my own, I just can't get it right. It doesn't matter how hard I try, but with you, I become a much stronger man. But in my case, it's a woman. Getting on my knees gets me back on my feet again. That's kind of a powerful statement to me. Epilepsy could control me. I could allow it to let me think, oh, I can't do this. Oh, I'm just so powerless. Oh, I can't be something. Instead, I've become greater than epilepsy. It's what I have, not who I am. I am free from epilepsy. This necklace was designed by my good friend Brittany Hartman at her shop Clavicle Havoc. The bird symbolizes free, and this purple ribbon is the color of epilepsy. I don't know if you can see that. I'll kind of zoom in for you on that. Free from epilepsy. That's kind of how I feel. I am so free from epilepsy. Well, my body may not be perfect. I still have flaws. I still have problems with a lot of triggers. And I shake. But I consider it this way. I am shaken, but I am stirred to action. So what exactly is epilepsy? For most people, it's falling on the floor, foaming at the mouth, and shaking all over. While in some cases this is true, that's not exactly accurate. Epilepsy is a bit more complicated. Epilepsy is a hidden neurological disorder that causes the brain to misfire, setting off a series of seizures. Now, I know some of you out there are going, "What? I don't understand what you're saying." There's probably a whole bunch of reasons. Probably some expert out there who will probably give me a lot of big, long, rhetorical explanation for it. But I've narrowed it down to 3. First thing, there's a lot of superstitions and stereotypes that are still around about epilepsy. Since 4000 BC, with its initial discovery by Hippocrates, the father of medicine and also the discoverer of epilepsy, epilepsy has just been considered a lot of things, such as a mental illness, or it's been considered a curse, or it's been considered something that's done by witches, or it's something associated with witches even. Especially during the Salem witch trials, if you had epilepsy, you were going to be probably drowned, burned, stoned, jailed, maybe if you were lucky. But people with epilepsy like to keep it quiet. They don't want to discuss it. And a lot of the feed on Facebook and Twitter doesn't really help the cause at all. There are some sites that have groups called Seizures Are Fake, and there's a lot of jokes out there too about seizures that are very offensive. Another big reason is there's no advertisements out there for it, or a big lack of advertisements, I should say. You don't really see a celebrity out there endorsing epilepsy. You don't exactly see somebody coming out and saying, "Wear purple, help people." Can you name a celebrity who has epilepsy? Odds are you can't. But if somebody really big did endorse epilepsy awareness, imagine the impact. A third big reason why we don't talk about epilepsy is there's not a lot of proper first aid training. Movies and television inaccurately portray first aid, and especially those who have epilepsy. It feeds into the stereotypes and into the stigmas about people with epilepsy. So what exactly causes epilepsy? I don't know. A lot of experts don't know either. It's still a mystery. There's not really a cure for it either. But there are some things that could possibly cause epilepsy. For instance, if you had a concussion, that could possibly lead to epilepsy and seizures. The more you have, the more likely you are to have epilepsy. Another factor is a prolonged illness, such as meningitis, or if you had pneumonia for a while, you could possibly get epilepsy. Genetics also plays a factor. You could have an aunt, uncle, some other blood relative who has it. You could possibly get epilepsy. If you were in an accident, such as a car crash, or you had a traumatic event, such as falling off a swing when you were a kid, or if you hit your head off a rock while rock climbing or something like that, you could possibly end up with epilepsy and get seizures, perhaps. The last one is still controversial. You can feel free to disagree with me. I'm not holding it against you. Energy drinks are still being studied to see if there's a connection between the consumption of energy drinks and the likelihood to have seizures. The only thing I have to say to you is this. Please be careful, especially if you are young and still growing. Not all of these factors could lead to epilepsy and seizures. These are just possible factors. There's also a lot of myths about epilepsy. Some myths that I've heard include epilepsy is contagious, like the common cold. If I were to walk into a room with a bunch of people, apparently I could spread it from one person to the next. Another popular myth is that people who have epilepsy will swallow their tongue during a seizure. I have a challenge for you. You can try this on your friends too if you want. Try to swallow your tongue. Go on, try it. You can't, can you? Another one that I've heard is epilepsy is supposed to look different. I don't know what the look is, but apparently if you have epilepsy, you're supposed to have a certain look about you. Another one is epilepsy is a mental illness. How many of you have ever heard or even uttered this phrase? All the lunatics come out when there's a full moon. Do you know why we say that? If you're curious or you've done research on it for a psychology or sociology class, then you might know the answer, like I've done the research for it. This goes back to the ancient Roman times. The word epilepsy comes from the Greek word epilepticus, meaning moonstruck. With each mental illness or neurological disorder, it was associated with a different phase of the moon. For instance, epilepsy is associated with the full moon. And apparently, since it's feminine, the word epilepsy is feminine in form, it offended the feminine goddess, Diana. Not just the goddess of chastity and the hunt, but also goddess of the moon. There's also a lot of similar gods and goddesses stories, like Celeste, Selene, La Luna. But the story is pretty much the same in every culture that has a god or a goddess. It goes like this. For instance, in the Roman culture, it's the story of Diana and Dionysus. Here's the story. Diana's out bathing one day, and it's at night, because young women were supposed to expose themselves to the moon, because if you were a bad girl, you did it during the broad daylight. And so Danny goes out and sees her in all her splendor. Because he saw her in all her splendor, he's cursed with lunacy. Therefore, anyone who has epilepsy is considered cursed. But if you had epilepsy back then, you had possible cures besides being separated from everybody else. You could eat mistletoe, but you had to get it a certain way. Your dearest friend or loved one had to get a shepherd's crook, make sure they got off the bush, make sure it didn't touch the ground, and then feed it to you. And you had to eat it. But there's a little problem with that. It's poison. Eating mistletoe is poisonous, and you will die. But if you didn't want to eat mistletoe, you could always visit the temple of your favorite god or goddess. All you had to do was go inside the temple, wait for your favorite god or goddess to come, and then they'd come out and say, "You are healed," and you're healed. Presto. Or you could have a ram's horn burned under your nose, or a goat as a substitute if you can't find the nearest ram. By the time you reach the Middle Ages, you could get yourself a silver ring, and you'd wear it on your finger, and you'd pray to your favorite saint. You had about 80 to choose from. Ones that you could pray to include St. Paul. In Ireland, epilepsy is called St. Paul's disease, or you could pray to St. Valentine. Not just for lovers, but he's also the saint of epilepsy. According to mythology, St. Valentine helped cure people with epilepsy. Or you could choose any of the other 80 saints. The only other illness that had more saints than epilepsy was the Black Plague, with 120 to choose from. The medical world of epilepsy has definitely advanced since its ancient times. 70% of people who have epilepsy take a form of medication, myself included. I take one medication at a time, and I have one that I take sometimes when I need to. However, it doesn't work for everyone. Some people have to take a brand name of medication because generic form of epilepsy medications do not work, while others have to go to the next form of epilepsy treatment, which is the ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet was discovered by Hippocrates back in 4000 BC. This diet consists of a high-protein, low-carb diet. For some people with epilepsy, the consumption of too many carbohydrates causes the person to go into seizures. Most people with epilepsy who use the ketogenic diet are young adults and children. There is no cheating on this diet. You balance out how much proteins like beef or fish or even chicken, and then you balance it out with your sides like vegetables or fruits, or sometimes a little bit of dairy depending on the person's dietary needs. Some people it works, sometimes there's no change, and sometimes it's not doing any good at all. And when this doesn't work, some people go to medical devices or surgery. There's things like the vagus stimulant. A vagus stimulant fits like a pacemaker right here, and then it goes up to the neck right about here. And you get a magnetic strip, Usually a caregiver or a loved one goes and just sort of zips it around, just restarts it. For someone who is having a seizure, it just re-triggers the brain to normal activity, so the person can have normal brain activity. Now they make them really, really small, not as big for some models. I don't know if they still have them now. I'm not very sure. I've been just still researching them. And for some people this works. But if you ever encounter somebody who's having a seizure and they have a vagus stimulant and you don't have first aid training, please don't touch it. Wait for somebody with proper first aid training to handle that. I don't want you to touch it and have it go all wrong on you. There's also laser surgery for people who have epilepsy available. It used to be really old-fashioned where you go in, you get your brain surgery done for the part of the brain that's triggering seizures, and they'd have to take that part of the brain out, like special, like almost like a lobotomy pretty much, and just take it out and sew you back up. Now they use a laser and fix you up and you're good to go. I know a friend of mine had it done, and she's really been doing well with her surgery. Another thing that's still in the trial stage is using steroids to help control seizures. That is questionable to me. I don't know if it works for everybody necessarily, but they've been testing it for people with epilepsy, especially people with concussions. They've been testing it with an 8-year-old boy, and it's been helping him, but I won't say it works for everybody. There's also available therapy, like biofeedback, talk therapy. You can have animal therapy. Some people with epilepsy have a trained dog. So if a person has a seizure, the dog can alert somebody to call 911, or it can help the person who has epilepsy to know when a seizure's coming, and just alert people around them too. And there's also available plant therapy. You can have music therapy. Plus, there's a whole bunch of other options for medical treatment for people who have epilepsy, a lot of which I don't even have time to discuss. And there's a lot that's still in development because the medical world just keeps evolving. So how many kinds of epilepsy are out there? There's plenty to choose from, but I'm going to narrow it down to 3 kinds of seizures. There's generalized, absence, and complex partial. The first kind, generalized, are what most people think of when they hear the word epilepsy. The person falls on the floor, foams at the mouth, and shakes all over. This person is completely unconscious. TV shows and movies exploit this type of epilepsy and seizures all the time. The second kind, absence seizures, are more difficult to distinguish. When somebody's having an absence seizure, this is what happens. The person's kind of zoned out or has a frozen look on his or her face, or kind of looks like he or she is dreaming. But that's not true. The person's absent present. That's why it's called absence seizures. I get these sometimes. It affects the entire brain, and the person could be out for 5 minutes, could be out for 10 minutes, could be out for 3 to 5 seconds, and you never know he or she is gone. The third kind is complex partial seizures. This affects one side of the brain, or one part of the brain, and one side or one part of the body goes numb, shakes. It depends on what part is affected. I get these sometimes, and it affects the right side of my body. Sometimes it affects my arm and my leg. Sometimes it's just my arm. Sometimes it's just my leg, depending on the severity of the seizure. When somebody's having a complex partial seizure, here are some signs to look for. Smacking of the lips, picking at the shirt like this, repeating a phrase incoherent over and over, could be mumbling a phrase incoherently, daydreaming. But these are some signs that a person could be having a complex partial seizure, but it doesn't necessarily mean a person could be having one. These signs could also be confused with mental illness, bad behavior, or even drunkenness. If a person does have a complex partial seizure, here are some things that you could do to help. First off, please make sure if the person's going to wander away, make sure the person doesn't go either downstairs or in water. Another thing you can do is make sure if the person wakes up, you can make sure that he or she is okay. You can talk to them, depending on the person, because this next step is very important. If a person is angry while having a complex partial seizure, do not help. Sometimes when a person's having a seizure, it can affect a person's emotional state. Some people who have seizures can be really, really happy before a seizure happens, or even really, really depressed before an onset of a seizure, depending upon the person's temperament or even mood or whatever. I can't even say. But that you should keep in mind. Another thing you should do is, for all types of seizures, is check for medical ID. Usually someone who has epilepsy has a bracelet of sorts with a red cross on it, and it identifies epilepsy on it. I don't know where mine is. It's lost somewhere. But here are some other things to keep in mind when someone is having a seizure. Here's an acronym to keep in mind. Use your brain. B-R-A-I-N. Brain. B stands for be calm. Panicking will not help you, nor will it help the person having a seizure. R. Remove any tight clothing, such as neckties or chokers, even unbuttoning the top 2 buttons off a shirt with a collar. A. Always time the seizure. Timing is everything. What time did it start? What time did it end? How long did it last? I. If anything, make sure to support the person's head if he or she falls, and turn him or her over on his or her side during a seizure. And lastly, never, ever, ever, ever stick an object in someone's mouth or hold a person down during a seizure. I know it's very tempting when you see somebody having a seizure and you really, really, really want to put something in there or try to hold a person down because they're moving so fast. Don't. Contrary to what movies and television teach you about sticking objects in a person's mouth and holding a person down, don't do it. But call 911 if a person's experiencing a seizure for the first time, if a seizure lasts longer than 5 to 10 minutes, if the person's in water, if the person's unconscious, if the person's pregnant or has diabetes, if the person has stopped breathing or has repeated seizures. Don't hesitate to call 911, please. To help promote epilepsy awareness, there's a lot of things that you can do to promote epilepsy awareness. One of the most obvious things you can do is wear purple. Purple is the color of epilepsy. Purple expresses depression and isolation. This is what is commonly felt among the community of epilepsy, and it shouldn't have to be that way. You could also have an event to celebrate those who help others with epilepsy or those who have epilepsy. There are different events that celebrate this. The first one is in March. It's March 26th, and that is Purple Day. Purple Day was created by a girl named Cassidy Megan. She started this holiday in 2008 so people with epilepsy would know they are not alone. 4 years later, Nova Scotia, Canada, created a law that makes Purple Day an official holiday. It was called the Purple Day Act, by the way. And she's won the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Award, and she's recently won another award. So that's not too bad for a girl who's only 13. You could also celebrate it in April 20th, which is the National Walk for Epilepsy. This is held in Washington, D.C. It starts from the Washington Monument and goes in front of the White House, and you have people from all across the United States, from different epilepsy organizations come, and they talk about epilepsy and celebrate the heroes who've made a difference for epilepsy awareness. And they honor those who've died with epilepsy. They celebrate those who still have epilepsy. There's also another event, it's in November, called Epilepsy Awareness Month. For 30 days, and in 30 ways, you can celebrate epilepsy in so many different ways. You could have your sports team wear purple. You could have your local bakery make purple cupcakes. You could have your local business put up purple on your in your store window. You could have a purple sale where items that are purple are 20% off or however much of a discount you want. And the donations go to your local epilepsy nonprofit organization. You can find the nearest one you want to donate to. At the end of this video, I have a list of the organizations that you can choose from. You could also get really creative by having a bunny hop if you want. You could do a dance-a-thon if you want. A bunny hop, by the way, is when you get local businesses together and they can donate, say, $1 per hop. Kids like to get involved in that. And you have a local DJ play music, and then somebody dressed up in a bunny, but that's more towards Easter. But you could have a local dance of sorts. You could have a local walkathon if you want. A run. You could have a walk or a run. You could do a local fashion show if you want. Get local businesses involved and do a fashion show if you want for Purple. You could send cards to your local children's hospital if you want. Anything to raise awareness. But you don't have to limit it to those holidays alone. You can do it all year round. The Anita Kaufman Foundation has lots of suggestions for you to do epilepsy awareness all year round. You could also have a school nurse or someone from the Red Cross to do first aid. Or you could even have a representative from the Anita Kaufman Foundation to come in and do first aid at your local business or organization. But one of the biggest things that you can do is simply talk about it. Talking about it with your neighbors, talking about it with your friends, talking about it with your coworkers, talking about it at your school, your college, your local hospital, your local church. Talking about it anywhere you go, even on your Twitter page, your Facebook page. Simply talking about it to knock down the stereotypes and the stigmas. You can even go so far as talking to your local representative to pass a Purple Day Proclamation Act. Purple Day, of course, is in March, but you can talk to your local representative. All you have to do is find your local representative's page and schedule a meeting, and then you can ask politely to have a proclamation passed. All you have to do is go to the Purple Day website and pull it up and send a copy to your local representative and get it passed. I did that, and there was a Purple Proclamation passed in my state of Pennsylvania, which was really, really exciting. But there's a lot of things that you can do to help promote epilepsy awareness. Because epilepsy is not who you are. It's what you have. Quote I got on a plate for Christmas this year from my aunt. Dance because you can. Jump because you can. Run because you can. Walk because you can. Laugh because you can. Love because you can. Do it for those who can't. How will you help? If you have any questions about epilepsy, or you want more information about where to begin, you can visit these websites. The Epilepsy Foundation of America, www.efa.org. The Anita Kaufman Foundation, www.akfus.org. Purple Day, the holiday created by Cassidy Megan, www.purpleday.org. Or, if you have any questions for me, such as, where do I begin? Or you just want to know more about my story, such as how in the world do I deal with epilepsy every single day of my life, or you're just plain interested in me, or my support group, Perplexity Epilepsy Support Group, that's purple with an XITY. You can email me at plasmnetic, that's PLASMNETIC, at gmail.com. I will hopefully have the Perplexity Epilepsy Support Group site up on Facebook soon. I hope to hear from you soon. I will try to answer your questions as best as possible. I'm no expert, but I hope to guide you into the right places with organizations that know more than I do. They've been doing it longer than I've had epilepsy. And hopefully I will talk to more of you out there who have epilepsy, because this is what you have, not who you are.